Welcome to Postcolonial Space. I'm Masood Raja. And today I'll briefly talk about one of the most commonly misunderstood and misquoted quotes of Karl Marx, and that is, religion is the opiate of the masses, or religion is the opium of the people. Now, this quote is often cited both from people who are religious and people who are not necessarily religious, but often the discussions of it are out of context. So I'm just going to first put the text on screen and then talk about it a little, with the hope that this will help you understand the whole quote within its context better. Of irreligious criticism is, man makes religion, religion does not make man. Religion is indeed the self-consciousness and self-esteem of man who has either not yet won through to himself or has already lost himself again. But man is no abstract being squatting outside the world. Man is the world of man, state, society. This state and this society produce religion, which is an inverted consciousness of the world, because they are an inverted world. Religion is the general theory of this world, its encyclopedic compendium, its logic in popular form, its spiritual point d'honneur, its enthusiasm, its moral sanction, its solemn complement, and its universal basis of consolation and justification. It is the fantastic realization of the human essence, since the human essence has not acquired any true reality. The struggle against religion is therefore indirectly the struggle against that world whose spiritual aroma is religion. Religious suffering is, at one and the same time, the expression of real suffering and a protest against real suffering. Religion is the sigh of the oppressed creature, the heart of a heartless world, and the soul of soulless conditions. It is the opium of the people. The abolition of religion as the illusory happiness of the people is the demand for their real happiness. To call on them to give up their illusions about their condition is to call on them to give up a condition that requires illusions. The criticism of religion is therefore in embryo the criticism of that veil of tears of which religion is the halo. So first of all, Marx wrote this in 1843 as an introduction to his book, A Critique of Hegel's Philosophy of Right. Now, the introduction was also published as a standalone article, but it didn't have a very wide circulation. But this quote, religion is the opiate of the masses, becomes very prominent when Marxism becomes prominent in the 20th century, but also in the 19th century. So let us go over the passage. The first thing that stands out is, man makes religion. Religion does not make man. Now, this is crucial to understand. Now, Marx's explanation of the word or understanding of the word is materialistic. At other places, he also asserts that it's the material conditions that create human consciousness and not the consciousness that creates the man. I mean, actually, he takes that from Freud, okay? But the difference is that instead of relying on an inner consciousness that interprets the word or creates ourself, what he's saying is that the material conditions create who we are, define our class, define our worldview. So man makes religion, religion does not make man. So the creation of religion, its initiation, is material, and it's a human-made thing, according to Marx. It doesn't descend from top above, from something beyond humanity. So that's the first thing that he's pointing out in this passage. And religion, then he's saying, is self-consciousness and self-esteem of man who has either not yet won through to himself or has already lost himself again. But this consciousness that is materially created is of a person who maybe knows his reality, but hasn't really what eventually would be called become a man for himself, right? Or have not a fully realized humanity, right? This person thinks the world, right? And then that idea of the world through their lived experience is what is expressed in religion. That's the distinction we need to understand. But then the most important part here is that when man or humans, when we think the world, we don't think the world from outside of it. We are not abstractions. We are part of this world, right? So then, if we are part of this world, what we think of God or whatever of the world is part of that material existence, is part of that material experience. So this distinction is important to understand, that consciousness doesn't descend from somewhere above and enter our souls. Consciousness is material. It's materially produced. And if it is material, and if constructs who we are, then when we think in religious terms, we are thinking within the lived conditions of our material reality. That is what he's trying to point out here. That is what will take us to his culminating thought. And since this world in which human beings are thinking of their life in it is inverted, you could say inverted in a sense that there is a dominant group and then millions upon millions of people who toil, right? And if they accept that condition as real, then they would think of it in religious terms. They will transport it to something outside their control. And that's the function of religion, right? Which in its extreme forms can be a kind of fatalism, where you, first of all, accept your place in the world as willed by God, or transport your aspirations and hopes to a better afterlife. But all of that is because of the material existence, right? So because human beings live in the society, live in the world, they express that world through religion. So religion then, when he calls it a compendium, religion is the larger ideology that they construct themselves to make life tolerable, bearable, right? And then transport all their hopes and desires to an afterlife. So if you look at indirectly the struggle against that word whose spiritual aroma is religion. So expression of religion by transporting their hopes, aspirations, and their fears to this other realm, they are literally, in a way, expressing the world in which they live, right? And the religion becomes, if that's the essence, right, then religion is its fragrance, its aroma. Now, essence, question of essence is also really complicated in Marx, okay? In Marx's theorization of the human self, it's a very humanistic understanding of human self, which is that deep down, as human beings, we are centered human subjects, In the world in which we live, we are alienated from ourselves because of what we have to do to make a living. So part of the revolutionary process is to reconcile us with our true essence of what we want to do, that is disalienated labor. So those thoughts are also need to be traced in this. And then in the second paragraph, he goes, religious suffering is at one and the same time the expression of real suffering and a protest against real suffering. So obviously, misery in life, suffering in life, right? Religious suffering it's an expression of it, but also religion gives us a way of challenging that suffering or normalizing that suffering, like sometimes making suffering itself as something noble, right? That, okay, God loves us, that's why he is testing us so much, right? Religion is the sigh of the oppressed creature, the heart of a heartless world, and the soul of soulless conditions. It is the opium of the people. So now we understand materially this person, this human who's living in intolerable conditions, in a soulless world, in an exploitative world, right? For this person, creation of a religious way of thinking, of living, is a way out of it because it acts as an opiate. It acts as opium. What does opium do? If you are in pain, what do opiates do? They ease your pain. They make it tolerable. Opium did the same thing. But they don't change the material conditions. If you are sick, an opiate is not going to cure your sickness. It's going to take the pain away. So religion is the opium of the people, then is not that people are drugged by religion, but that it makes the intolerable conditions because of which this religious mythology might have been created, it makes them tolerable. So when it makes them tolerable, there is no need for change because we have transported our hopes for change and our aspirations for change to this other world, to the heaven, to the afterlife. So that is the true context, in a way, of religion is the opium of the people or opiate of the masses. Going to the last paragraph, the abolition of religion as the illusionary happiness of the people is the demand for their real happiness. Why is it illusionary happiness? It's illusionary because it makes the conditions, the unjust conditions, tolerable and makes us live through them, but doesn't encourage us to change things. That's the illusion, that this is how the world is. The real happiness, of course, will be when we can create a world of equals, in which there is no oppression, in which there is no hunger, in which there is no poverty, right? To call on them to give up their illusion about their condition is to call on them to give up a condition that requires illusions. This is really important. He's not saying that religion is somehow an illusion. It functions as an illusion. So if we call on people to give up this illusionary relationship to this afterlife or to this just God, what we are asking them to do is to look at the world critically and find out that this life is so intolerable that it needs this illusionary mechanism to make life tolerable, right? But to be really free, we have to eliminate the illusionary experience and look at the world and then change it. Now, this fits perfectly in Marx's theorization of ideology, right? In Marx, as I've previously also discussed, ideology is this veil, right? This veil because of which we see the world from the point of view of the dominant classes. And the purpose of revolution is to lift the veil so that we could see the real experience it, but also interpret it. That's why there's this focus on material existence, right? Now, of course, people like Althusser and others have complicated that understanding, that epistemological model of ideology, but you can watch my other video for that. So the last sentence, the criticism of religion is therefore in embryo the criticism of the veil of tears of which religion is the halo. So if religion is what we created out of the necessary conditions of life, and if we created it to make this life tolerable, to justify it, and to hope for change in the afterlife, then what we are criticizing when we are asking to criticize religion and its practices isn't necessarily that it's not true and it's illusionary. We are criticizing then the living conditions, the intolerable injustices and living conditions that made it necessary for people to create this way of justifying the world and existing in it. That's the world, that's the intolerable valley of tears, the unjust world, right, upon which we have placed this halo called religion, right? So that's roughly my understanding of it. So what should we keep in mind when we read this? Of course, never to quote, religion is the opiate of the masses, without understanding its full context. We cannot understand it unless we understand the materialistic explanation of history, class consciousness, and living conditions. And within that, Marx is acknowledging that religion has a function. It makes life tolerable. But we don't just want life to be tolerable. We want a revolutionary praxis. And a revolutionary praxis would then involve understanding the world in which we live, coming together as equals, understanding its hierarchies and inequalities, and then changing the world. Now, a question arises out of it, well, can religion be a revolutionary ideology? Absolutely. But does it promise at the end a classless society? Does it promise a world of equals, right? A world in which no one owns the mode of production. Everyone owns the mode of production and the world and its resources. I have read pretty much all the religions. None of them promises that. But it's not for me to judge which faith or which religion you follow. That's entirely up to you. My purpose here was, of course, to explain within the context of the quote itself, this often misquoted and misunderstood saying of Marx. I hope this was useful to you. Let me know what you think. I'm really grateful for your time, and I will now see you next time. Please take a look at the playlist that comes up after this. There are some other good videos on similar topics there, and let me know what you think about those as well. Thank you so much, and as always, peace and love.